Thank you, Ron, for that kind introduction. Folks, it's a pleasure to join y'all today at the Drive Electric Alabama EV Summit here in Birmingham. This is a big deal. And over the course of the last 30 years, Alabama has gone from not even being on the map in the automotive sector to being an industry giant. Today, we are one of America's top 5 producers and exporters of cars and light trucks. And like our college football, we are proud of the standard of excellence we've set in the automotive industry. But it's no secret that this is an industry that's changing day by day. In the last several years, we've seen an entirely new market emerge for many automotive manufacturers, and it's clear that EVs are on the way and will continue to gain popularity among our drivers. And here in Alabama, our strategy is pretty plain and simple. We support the decisions of both the automakers and the consumer. Automakers are investing billions into this new technology, and I believe Alabama is uniquely positioned to be a leader in the EV industry. We are making investments in charging infrastructure across the state, which assures Alabamians that they will want these vehicles that they can always be able to get from point A to point B. This also ensures that out-of-state EV drivers will be able to charge their vehicles on the way to the beach and spend money in Alabama while they're here. We also recognize the impact EV manufacturing can have on our state's economy. I mentioned that Alabama is uniquely positioned to be a leader in EV production, but that's not because we already have a nation-leading automotive industry already in place. Alabama is also home to a first-of-its-kind advanced graphite processing plant in Coosa County, putting our state at the forefront in the production of an essential material in batteries that power EVs. Having the ability to source precious metals in the state for the lithium-ion batteries that power these vehicles will be a big advantage in attracting other EV manufacturers to Alabama. Recently, we've seen California move to ban the sale of the gas-powered vehicles by 2035. Y'all, Alabama is proud to be an EV business, not the consumer mandate business. That's a decision that should be left up to drivers, not government. But that doesn't mean Alabama is not preparing for what's to come. As a national leader in manufacturing autos, we are embracing the next generation of vehicles so we can create thousands of high-quality jobs and billions of dollars in investment into our state's economy. So if California wants to mandate that only electric cars and trucks can be sold in the Golden State, Alabama will be more than happy to supply them. If we like being a top auto exporter today, we need to lean in on this new technology for the sake of our economy tomorrow. And y'all will hear a lot more in detail about these efforts in today's presentations and discussions. During today's summit, I encourage each of you to look for ways to collaborate and position Alabama for even greater success. Our foundation is strong, but we must continue to lay the groundwork for tomorrow, and that starts right here, right now. Let's commit ourselves like never before to the future of our state and future generations. There's great possibility in Alabama. This is our opportunity. Let's not waste a moment. Thank you so much for the invitation to join y'all here today. Now let's get powered up for the future. May God continue to bless each of you and the great state of Alabama.
As evidenced by today, our governor is with us, and I'm proud to be able to stand up here and say that. Well, we're going to move right on to our program, and our next event here will be a panel, and my good friend from Honda, Michael Gaines, will come up, and I believe we have a slide that tells us a little bit about Michael.
Good morning. Thanks, Ron. It's great to be here at the Drive Electric EV Summit, and I'm happy to introduce the first panel where we can get started talking about the EV initiatives across our Yellowhammer state. You know, the first step is what's the state going to do, and later today we're going to talk about what all the car companies will do. But first, as the automotive industry goes through this unprecedented transition, we must continue to work together as industry and government for our long-term success. This EV Summit, like Ron said, is a good example of that. Not only does industry and government have to work together, but today you can see we're collaborating with educators and workforce development partners to make sure that we all play a big role in this transition. By sharing information and strategies and challenges, we can all work toward making EVs accessible to our customers and ensure the future of Alabama industry. You know, in that spirit, this summit is a step toward that. It's kind of a kickoff, a power-up. And we're working together to ensure the success of industry and the growth in the state. Honda's always put a priority on these type of partnerships, and we'll continue to work together with the state and the rest of industry to ensure that we're successful through this transition. Now I'm glad to introduce Michael Staley, who will host our first panel. Michael's the president of the Alabama Clean Fuels Coalition, and he has vast experience in U.S. and state policies and very great knowledge about energy strategies. So please enjoy our first panel, the EV initiatives in the Yellowhammer State, and now I'll turn it over to Michael.
Good morning. Good crowd here. I'm going to get my notes out. Try not to have to wear my cheaters, but I've got them in my pocket in case I need them. So I've got my panelists here for this first panel. If y'all could come on up, that'd be great, and take a seat, and we'll get started. We're going to have 45 minutes for this panel discussion. And what we're going to do is first we're going to hear from our panelists, and I'll introduce them to do that in a second when they get situated. And then we're going to go into a phase of Q&A where we're going to talk between us. And what we hope is that at the end we'll have time, and there are, throughout the audience here, you see there's microphones, and all you got to do is just raise your hand. You don't have to step up and stand in line to ask questions or to make comments. So we hope we'll have interactive discussions all day. I'm really excited to kick this panel discussion off. And I wanted to start just by saying, I remember, and I think maybe I can get a show of hands, I like audience engagement, but Encyclopedia Britannica. I remember in the 1980s when my parents got a new set, and I remember when I was in school, you know, young kid at that time, and if I had a paper or I was researching something and I saw information in that Encyclopedia Britannica, it was good to my teachers, it was good to my parents, and I could count on it. And in today's world, we all know that we're inundated with information in the online world. And there's a whole bunch of information out there about EVs, and it's all across the spectrum. So coming together today, you know, the whole idea is that you're looking at a panel of people who are leading efforts in the state related to EV initiatives from the state level. And they're also inundated with that information, but you know, what we say now is I'll believe it when I see it. And I just want to say, look around this room at those trucks and the Mercedes vehicles back there and all the vehicles, the buses that are electric. I think we see it. And so when I speak around the state to different groups, many of your associations, I find that people have a true knowledge or thirst for knowledge about EVs and to have a discussion. So today we're going to maybe go about that deep and this wide, and we're going to talk and we're going to learn together. So without any more delay, what I'm going to do is ask these four great panelists up here to introduce themselves. And so I'm going to start, and I'll just read who they are, and then we'll go through. We have Representative Danny Garrett. He's the Alabama House of Representatives Ways and Means Education Committee Chairman. We have Director Kenneth Boswell here on the left side from the Alabama Department of Economic and Community Affairs. We have Holly Pegg, who's the Assistant Director of Business Development at the Alabama Department of Commerce. And we also have Mike Oatridge, and Mike is the Executive Director of the AMP Center, the Alabama Mobility and Power Center at the university. So without further delay, I'm going to turn it over to Director Boswell and let him give us some opening remarks here. And you're welcome to come here or stay at your seat, whatever you're comfortable with.
Whichever. You want up there or here?
It's your call.
Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well this morning. My name is Kenneth Boswell. I'm the Director of Alabama Department of Economic and Community Affairs, otherwise known as ADECA. One of the things that you just heard Governor Ivey speak about is the support of the automotive industry. And would tell you that one of my missions as an agency director is that we have given that mission from the standpoint of support of EVs, and not only from the standpoint of being able to reduce range anxiety to those consumers that are actually buying the vehicles, but also to educate the public from the standpoint of letting them know that there are options out there other than internal combustible engines. So we have made a conscious effort. If you'd like to learn more about that particular issue, the education component of it, go to www.driveelectricalabama.com, and would tell you that I think that you can not only educate yourselves, but also while you're in social functions and things of that nature, and you are talking about EVs, please direct them to that particular website. We think that it is an absolute great tool to be able to educate those about EVs and what they're about. But we are now in the process of actually getting our Alabama state plan approved by FHWA, and would like to say that at this particular point in time that I was in contact with the Alabama Department of Transportation yesterday, and they have actually contacted FHWA, Federal Highway Administration. They have actually made a commitment to the state of Alabama that this plan will be approved by or before the end of the month. We actually had submitted that. We began this journey over 2 years ago. Michael has did a great job helping us put all of this plan together. The format is not what the federal government actually wanted. We gave them more information than what they needed for a change. So just stay with us, ladies and gentlemen, because that will be forthcoming. And just as soon as it is, we'll publish it on our website and we'll start implementation. Michael?
Great. Well, so next we'll hear from Mike Oatridge, and welcome to.
Stand up there.
Sounded like Star Wars there for a second. I had my lightsaber going. I'm Mike Oatridge. Welcome, everybody. And I want to talk a little bit about what the AMP Center is posed to do. And, oh, we have a slide. Is there a slide?
So they have the slides back there.
Oh, it's there. Oh, there it is. There we are. It's a fairly new entity. I started at the Alabama Mobility and Power Center on August the 1st. And really what I want to talk about is the electric vehicle ecosystem. A lot of people, when they talk about electric cars, think exactly that. We're just going to change the way that we fuel our cars. We're going to change it from gas to electric. In reality, there's an entire change that's got to happen in the socialization of EVs. So this idea starts from the EV consumer, and very honestly, what does that EV consumer look like? How will they use their car? How will they use the power that they now have in possession that is in their car? Those will then drive some accurate forecasting based off of variables like how many charges there are in the state, the cost per kilowatt hour, the cost of gasoline, and many other variables to make us understand exactly what that adoption rate of EVs will be based off of these variables. Of course, that leads to raw material requirements. Those raw material requirements are then used to process components that end up in EV OEM manufacturers. And then, of course, there's an aftermarket. So most of us will end up with chargers in their garage. The skill sets required to maintain the infrastructure are going to be very different than the skill sets we have today. And of course, then there's the charging infrastructure from the power generation through distribution through the charging systems. Then, of course, material recovery. So, of course, Alabama Power, which I think is about half the people in this room, are really happy because they get to sell lots and lots of power, right? But that power also creates loads that they've never seen before. We're hearing that about in California today. Unfortunately, right now about 97% of the raw materials used to build the battery pack come from overseas. The good news is, as the governor just pointed out, we have graphite here in the state. But we have to start on-sourcing these materials and work through some environmental hurdles, because as those raw materials come into the market with gross EV adoption, the recycling will be the most important key aspect of this, where we create a closed loop for those materials by recycling those batteries. Great news is there's lots and lots of work to be done, or maybe that's the bad news. We need to do research and development into business intelligence and consumer use and consumer ability. We also need to do research and development into raw materials and synthetic materials and materials that exist here on U.S. soil to allow us to have independence in that raw materials. That, of course, leads to component manufacturing, OEM manufacturing, and then charging infrastructure and battery recovery. To do all this, we have to have a connected, automated, shared, and electrified network. So it's not just EVs that are coming on. There's connected, automated, and shared that comes along at the same time. That means we have to have a network that allows all of these cars to talk to one another, so we can forecast charging requirements. We can shift the grid to allow load to be distributed appropriately. That creates, of course, cybersecurity issues that will require a lot of computing power to overcome. And probably the biggest problem is, who's going to do all this work? So not only are we having a problem with physical manpower, but we now have a physical manpower and a skill set manpower that has to be overcome. So the AMP Center is set up to be the hub to listen to these concerns, surrounded by a consortium of groups of companies, from power companies to mining companies to processing companies to recycling companies and OEMs, all of those companies, and really listen to what the problems are. If we listen, then we have to translate. What I mean by that is we have to translate those problems into academia, because we have a lot of resources in research institutions in the Southeast, such as University of Alabama. Utilizing the research and capabilities of the university and translating them back into usable products with usable solutions will then spin off new companies. We'll create an innovation engine and innovative companies coming out of the state, and we have the opportunity to really lead in this area. Alabama is very uniquely set up to be a leader in this, because we have all of the components of that EV ecosystem, and it's going to allow us to really use this opportunity to move forward, not only in the adoption of EVs, but in the economic development opportunities here in the state. So we're really looking forward to it, and thanks for letting me talk today.
Good morning. As Michael said, I'm Holly Pegg. I'm with the Alabama Department of Commerce, and I lead our automotive practice. So I spend most of my time, day in, day out, working with our existing automotive OEMs, our suppliers, as well as recruiting and trying to bring those new companies into the state. As Governor Ivey mentioned this morning, the location of Mercedes in the early 90s really was transformative for Alabama. As I travel around the world marketing our state, it's interesting, the perceptions, and I have been with the Department of Commerce for almost 17 years, and it has changed. I did learn early on that everyone in Korea has seen Forrest Gump. And I have done my best to explain that while we are very proud of our Alabama author, it's not really a true story. But it really has positively impacted the image, as you can imagine, of our state throughout the world. And if not for Mercedes, possibly maybe not Honda, maybe not the Toyota engine plant, Hyundai, and our newest Mazda Toyota OEM located in Huntsville. So one of the other questions I'm often asked is, Alabama is a small state. Our population is very similar to the metro area of Atlanta. How do we do it? And I don't know how many of you know about the size of the Department of Commerce, but the workforce division is very, very large. The other piece, the original piece, is very small, just about 30 people, including support staff and everything else. Economic development in Alabama is a team sport. It truly is. We work very, very closely with our utilities partners. I see many, many of them here in the room today. Mike mentioned Alabama Power, but also TVA, our electric cooperatives, gas providers, and all of that. And then we work hand in hand with EDPA. Steve Sewell is here, and we work with them together. And that's how it really, really works. And that's a common question. And I think that goes into the next area of discussion, which is how are we going to continue to grow? Growth has not been a problem for us. We have a very tight workforce now, and we'll talk more about that later, but we're not alone. It's a challenge, but it's one that we're ready to face. We do have a number of EV projects looking. So what I spend most of my time doing is working with new EV assemblers that are looking to come into the state, and also, of course, the battery companies. And one of the biggest challenges that we're facing right now is getting the right fit. We want to make sure that we have companies in the state that most importantly are going to complement the industries that we already have here. When we recruit a company to Alabama, we promise, we make that pledge, and I hope Mike would agree with that from his days at Honda, that we are going to recruit companies that are going to maintain those same values, and we're going to continue to operate as a right-to-work state, things of that nature. And so right now we're being very mindful. The legislature has been very supportive of the Department of Commerce and our ability to incentivize these projects, but it's critical that we use every dollar to make sure that we get the best fit so that we can grow going forward. Thank you.
My name is Danny Garrett. I am the state representative for House District 44, which includes Trussville, Clay, and portions of Pinson that are here in the Jefferson County area and outside of